All right. Hello, hello. We are back for another podcast episode of the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast. I am Lindsay Dollinger, and I'm super excited for, I think, our only second male guest ever. So, Paul Gowder, welcome so much. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for coming to the show, and welcome to the show. And little side note to this, super quick. We will be having more male guests on in the future. So I have some in the lineup, but Paul, you're our first one for a while. But anyway, Paul and I met the October. I was gonna say summer, and it was not summer. October at Lou Mangello's Momentum Mastermind Weekend. Did I say that right? Mastermind
Yes.
Weekend? Is that what he calls it? Okay. And I know, Paul, you've gone several times, and I don't want to steal your thunder by sharing your story or anything like that. But it was my first time there, and I've talked about it a lot on the show. And you guys know, if you've listened, that I had just like a mind-blowing, incredible experience there. And so anyway, that's how Paul and I met. And I was also blown away by Paul's story and everything he had to share. So I know you guys are going to gain a lot from this episode today. So Paul, again, welcome. That's the longest intro I have done in a really long time. But tell us, like, who are you? How did you get started doing what you do? And we'll go from there.
Sure. So yeah, Paul Gowder, and I'm based out of Lexington, South Carolina, and married, father. My daughter is a freshman at the College of Charleston, and so we're dealing with the whole empty nest thing. So there's that, and of course, huge Disney fan, which is how I got into Lou's community. And if anybody hasn't heard of Momentum, it hasn't listened to your other shows, and you talking about it, it is something that everybody needs to do. It's one of those things, just being intentional about your business and taking the time to learn more and grow, and finding a community is such a blessing. But so I started powwows.com back in 1996. And now we are, and kind of my whole intention of doing this is, we want to be a place where anybody, whether you're native or non-native or part or whatever, that you can go learn, explore, experience, connect with Native American culture. Our goal is to help others learn more about it, appreciate it more, and then, of course, support Native people, Native artists, Native businesses. And we do that through a variety of ways, with an event calendar, with articles and live streaming and all kinds of other things. So I started in 1996. Like I said, it was really just a way to teach myself how to build web pages back in grad school. And I said, I'm kind of an accidental entrepreneur. I fell into this. From right away, we kind of had a community start building, and people wanted to engage with each other and learn more. And from there, we have grown into with a good following now. And in February, I was able to leave my full-time job with the state of South Carolina and go full-time with powwows.com. So it's been a crazy ride. 25 plus years of doing this. Always, the goal of one day, hey, maybe this could be a full-time job. So really blessed that was finally able to make that happen.
And I'm just so, like, that's such an inspiration to me, because, there are so many of us listening who, you've been in business 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're like, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? When's it going to happen? And you stuck with it. I'm assuming, and I can feel from your energy, you love what you do. You love the community that you have built. And you just knew in the end, like, you trusted and believed that it would pay off, so that you were able to leave your other job.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I was talking to Julie today, and from Momentum, and she's one of those people. And I think this is really important that, if you have those big goals, put it up on the wall, write it down, put it out there, what your big goal was. And for years, that was my big goal. And when people ask me, what are we building toward? That's it. I want to be full-time. I want to make this what I do for a living. And, it wasn't an overnight success. And I think so many people think they watch these, people on YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and these people do hit the jackpot and become overnight success. But that's not what it's like for most people. It is the persistence. It is the staying in there. It's the continuing to grow and to make the small moves, and just continuing to build on that momentum. To steal Lou's thunder there.
I know. I use that word so much now, by the way, and I'm always I feel like I have to credit it to him.
But yeah, it is. It's those small wins that add up to big victories, and it's just continuing. You got to stick with it. And it was, there was. I had a conversation with Lou this weekend I was at Podfest with him and some other folks from Momentum, and actually, it was with his wife. We were having the conversation, and there was a point not too long ago, it was maybe 3-4 years ago, and I was in Lou's mastermind group. I was doing his coaching, and I had a call with Lou, and I was like, Lou, man, the revenue is falling, traffic is not there, things aren't going well. I don't see a path where I'm ever going to be able to go full time. I don't see a path where I can continue going to conferences or paying for coaching. And I was like, it's just not going to happen. And
Yeah.
You have those kind of obstacles, but with Lou's help and others, it just kept going, kept sticking with it, and yeah, it did. There were some days I never thought this would happen. I'm really blessed that we were able to make it happen. And in fact, my wife and I are both now full time with powwows.com. So that's
Oh my
really,
gosh, I
really
didn't
exciting.
realize that. That's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah. And I can't believe it was just a couple years ago you were having that conversation. Like I wouldn't have guessed that at all based off of, you sharing a little bit about your business model in October.
yeah,
But thank you for sharing that because we've all been there many, 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 many a time where we're like, I was actually just heard on a podcast this morning. I forget what the theory is, but I think it was 3 feet from gold. And it's talking about like miners giving up
right,
when they're almost getting ready to hit it. And it's just like, keep going, because you never know how close you actually are to hitting whatever that big thing is.
right. You never know, and you never know who's listening. You never know what sponsor is following your content and is going to make that call with you. Yeah, you
Yeah.
never know what's going to happen. And you go, talking about that conversation I had, there was that conversation when things were going bad, and then other hurdles. It makes me reminisce. Even probably 6 months, a year before that, we made a site design change. Another thing that you never thought, in unintended consequences. We made a site design change. We made some mistakes in it, and at the time we were all all of our revenue was Google AdSense. We
Yeah.
lost, over the course of a month, we lost 50% of our revenue because our site speed was no longer good according to Google.
Oh,
Those were a tough 6 months.
wow.
We lost all of our search engine rankings. Yeah.
Oh
So
my gosh.
there are times, uh, and people hear me talk about it now, and they're like, "Oh, this is so great." And yeah, it's not easy. I mean, there's lots of
Yeah.
things that are going to happen along the way. You just have to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, what are some ways that you were able, if someone's trying to like imagine your business model, that you were able to monetize your community?
Right.
Because that's essentially what you've been able to do in
Yes.
different ways, right?
And so this weekend at Podfest, it's funny you asked that question. The talk that Jeff C, Lauren Gaggioli, Lou, and myself were on is monetizing your podcast
Oh,
and
perfect.
monetization. And one of the things we talked about is diversification. And when I had that scare with AdSense was probably like 90% of our revenue. And so when we lost that, it was really scary. And
Yeah.
so that was one of the things we had to do in the last few years, is really find other ways to have revenue. And we didn't want to, always depend on advertising revenue. Advertising is still our number one revenue source. And we do
Okay.
that. If people are wanting to learn more about that, we're in the Mediavine network, which if you are a blog and you're kind of wanting to monetize your traffic, getting into Mediavine or AdThrive, one of those premium networks, should be your goal. And
Okay.
it'll pay so much more than AdSense. I wish I'd known about it sooner. But yeah, so that's our main thing. We do
Okay.
sell a lot of direct sponsorships. So we work with some
Mhm.
partners to sell ads directly to different companies. And that's been very good. But we talked about it in our panel this weekend. That's kind of the holy grail, is to getting those sponsorships.
Mhm.
Those are hard. And a
Yeah.
lot of those do come from building relationships over years, putting out quality content and having sponsors reach out to you. One of the first big contracts we ever got was Motel 6 reached out to us several years ago. And
Wow.
the president of Motel 6 heard a podcast, and he went and looked us up, and it's like, oh my goodness, I love powwows. This is really cool. Let's work with this guy. So that was one of the first sponsorships we ever got that way.
That's
So you never
cool.
know who's listening. Yeah. But we also do other things. We
Mhm.
have a Patreon. We sell merchandise,
Mm,
so we have T-shirts and stickers and things like that. And we, as well as we're monetizing our videos on Facebook. We're monetizing on YouTube. So
mm,
there's that revenue stream. And then we are we have a service where we go out and live stream native events. So we work with 15 or so powwows throughout the year, and they hire us to come in and stream their events. So we tell them we're the best marketing you can get for your event. There's no other better marketing than us coming in and showing your videos to the world and streaming those live. So we work with a number of tribes and different organizations to do that as well.
I love that. Yeah, and I love that you just mapped that out because there really are so many different assets you have built on over time. I'm assuming
Right.
you didn't do them all at once, right?
No, no,
You've
it's
built
yeah.
on
And
over
there,
many years.
right, and there's things we've tried along the way that didn't work, and we had to drop them. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that we experiment with, and we're like, no, that
Mhm.
didn't work. So yeah, that's kind of where we are now. And we're starting to do. I'm branching out and doing other things too. I'm doing some coaching and consulting. I'm building some courses, so that's another revenue stream for us as well.
I love that. So because I definitely want to talk to you about how you built all this while you were also working
Yes,
a very demanding job. So what we're gonna get there. But just curious because a lot of the monetization things that you mentioned, especially like the ads, is due to the traffic.
right.
So what are some ways that you were able to build your community maybe when you first got started? Was it word of mouth? Because I mean, social media wasn't really a thing in 1996.
No,
So how have you yeah, you're like definitely not. How have you
yeah.
progressed into being able to build that community? Because I think you've done an amazing job at that.
Thank you. So a couple of things. One is our traffic comes from a couple of major ways, and we get traffic from all over, but really just a few that are the major sources. First is organic traffic, and so if you're building a blog or building a website, you have to spend time doing that SEO work. It's one of those things that's tedious, it's complicated, it's ever changing. If you can hire out or you take a course or whatever, rely on some experts, but do your SEO. That is super important, and it's something you have to continue working at.
Yeah.
So you want to get that organic traffic. And that's been really important for us, is to making sure we stay at the top of Google for certain keywords.
Yeah.
The other part is building community. And I always tell people, community is not a Facebook group. Community is not is not the place where you land your community. Community is just building that group of people that have a shared value and have a shared sense of belonging, right? So
Mhm.
you can build community in everything you do. So we are very intentional about that community feeling, and we do it in our email, we do it in our live streams, we do it, anytime I'm talking to my audience, it's always um, that conversation is always about community. And so we put that first. And that's a slower build than SEO. Sometimes it takes time, but you have to engage that community. You have to engage that person one-on-one directly. That was a big change. This was probably 3 years ago. I completely changed how I do my emails and went
Mhm.
from putting out, I used to call them, we used to send the Best Buy mailers, and it looked like this nice professionally thing with all this fancy pictures. We changed from that to writing just a text-based email where I tell personal stories and talk to my reader. And it has completely changed our email success. So being intentional and thinking about community and all the aspects of your business is really important. And again, that takes a lot of time,
Yeah.
and it's not going to happen overnight, but you do it one person at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. That's definitely how I've built all my businesses. And like you said, it's not always the fast way to do. And
Right.
I think that can be such a difficult thing when you're starting off too, because you're like, I want the success and I want
Yeah.
to be able to build this community. And it's slow going sometimes. Like you just keep going and you keep sharing yourself, sharing your stories, like you said, and the right people will find you. I think we just have to trust that.
Yeah. And it's, you need to be your authentic self. You don't want to change or, try to go after a market that's not yours.
Yeah.
Lou tells me I hear him say this all the time. You you be your authentic self, and the right people will come to you, and the followers you that match with you will come, and that's what you
Yeah.
have to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So let's talk about how this is like the golden question, right? How were you actually able to do this while I mean, you have a family.
Yes.
Like you had little kids at this time, right? I mean, all the way through since your daughter is just now left home. So, how were you able to build this and do all of this?
Yeah, that it wasn't always easy. There were times when we had to put the business aside. Um, but a couple of things is um, one is I really prioritized um, or tried to make sure I knew what the important projects were and prioritized different tasks. And so when I did have time, I was very intentional about here is what I have to get done. You know, going chasing those shiny objects when you don't have much time is hard. It's hard when you do have time, but when you have limited time, you can't go chasing after everything. So, um, there were days where I would I remember getting up and taking my daughter to school, and I would come home and I would have about 45 minutes before I had to get ready to go to work. And so I would get up early, I'd take her to school, I'd come home and I would sit down and answer emails or build out a feature on the website or do, whatever it was. Look
Mhm.
at that to-do list and figure out it. It was finding those time blocks. um, Lunches, there's a lot of times when I was working that I would skip going to lunch with the group from work, and I would go, grab takeout or bring something from home and sit in the car in a parking lot and work on the laptop trying to do something. And then
Yeah.
you know it, it's not fun, it's not glamorous, but I had to do that some days. I had to tell
Yeah.
people, sorry, I can't go to lunch today. I've got something that I got to do. um but then, when I was able, it was also hiring the right people, and finding some virtual assistants was really important. Even if it was, for small tasks. Again, I keep going back to Lou, but one of
Mhm.
the one of those early pieces of advice he gave me is because he would see it. It's like you can't do everything. You don't have the time. Figure out
Yeah.
the things you're good at, and then let other people do the rest of it. And
Yeah.
so, whether it was, for a while, I had somebody helping me with email or writing newsletter, writing pieces of the newsletter, things like that. Just taking little tasks off
Mhm.
my plate over the years made a big difference too.
Yeah. Do you remember was a VA your first hire? Do you
That's a good
remember what you
question.
hired out first?
No, because I've had a team for different people, but I've had different teams writing content on the site as well as people
Okay.
helping me do the actual in-person live streaming. So those were
Mhm.
probably the first help I got. Uh,
Gotcha.
but yeah, VAs have played a really big role for me.
Yeah, yeah. We just recently had a VA. Well, she has her own agency now, but
Mhm.
on the show, and I like to have one on of like every year because I think it's a really great reminder. Like, hey, if you haven't started delegating or outsourcing something yet, today might be a good time to start thinking about it because that's the thing. Like, it's time or money, right?
Right,
And you only have so much time.
right.
And like hopefully the end goal is if we are investing some money into our business by outsourcing, it's essentially there's like another one of you. So it's like more time being spent on the business and you bring in more revenue. Was that the case for you, or was there some time where you were, you know what I mean, like spending a little more on your outsourcing and then it finally paid off in
Oh,
the end to
sure.
hire out?
There were a lot of times where, I mean, I was working a full-time job, so that was our income.
Right.
The side business was just extra to help us do other things. Uh,
Mhm.
so yeah, there was a lot of times where we were spending above budget to hire help or whatever.
Mhm.
But another thing that really helped us too is we we put our daughter to work. Um, if you have a business, I highly recommend getting your kids involved. I
Yeah.
don't remember what grade she did this, but she was one of our first social media managers. She took
Love
over
that.
the Instagram page probably like seventh or eighth grade or something like that. And she did that for a
Mhm.
year or so, where she was completely running our Instagram.
Oh,
and
I
she
love it.
made huge growth in her. It was, she understood it better than I did.
Yep, yep.
So that was big. And then during high school, she fulfilled all of our orders. She was shipping out the stickers
Wow.
and we have a coloring book, all that stuff. She was doing all the fulfillment for us.
Oh, that's cool. And she probably really liked that too, because she grew up with that, right? Like that was
Right.
just a part of your family and enjoyed doing that. Now, has your wife always been an active part of the business, or is that
No,
something that came on later?
I mean, she's always been, yeah, and she's always been an active part of the business. And I started doing the website the same year we got married. So it has been a part of
Okay.
our relationship from the
Yeah.
beginning. And I always tell people she's kind of the conscious of powwows.com. So she's the one who keeps me in line or knocks me back in line if I need it, and tells me what's crazy, what's good, all that. And she's done various roles over the years. She's an accountant by training and experience.
Mhm.
And so there were times where she would help us with that part of it, money. Of course, then we got complicated enough where she no longer wanted to do that because it was, um,
A lot.
working spouses and trying to figure out money is not always a good thing. So there was a point at which we said, okay, that's enough. Um, but the reason she went full time is she actually went full time before I did. And going back to the whole VA thing, there was a point in time where she had a job offer and she was trying to figure out if she really wanted to make that move. She was in a job that she liked. She was comfortable. The new job would be more hours, a little bit more money. And so we're just trying to figure out if that was the right move. And
Mhm.
I sat down and we looked at the numbers and I was like, if you took over this VA's job and if you took over this job and if we put this stuff together and you take it over, I think we can cover you. And so
Wow.
we were at that point where there was we had hired enough of these, little task virtual
Mhm.
assistants that we combined several things together and were able to cover most of her salary that way. And she's also a travel agent. So she has that
Okay.
part of her income to kind of
Right.
offset that. And we were able to replace her salary.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Which is, I feel like, probably a lot of people's a lot of people's end goal listening to
Yeah,
this right now.
it is.
Um, oh gosh, there was something I was just gonna so in my mind, you are one of like the email marketing. I was gonna say gods out there, but I don't know what other word to use. But you are very knowledgeable with email marketing. One thing that I know a lot of my listeners do not have is an email list.
Oof.
I was gonna say react to that, and
Oh,
please let's walk them through why an email list is so important and how you can use it.
so when people ask me, what they need to do to start a business, the first thing, of course, is to figure out what your business is, what your offering is, what your service is. Sure, do all of that. But before you build a website, before you build anything online, the first thing you need to do is figure out how to collect emails and start there. Emails are the one thing you own, whether it's SEO, and Google can change those formulas at any time and you can lose all of your organic traffic. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of them can change their formulas or, prioritize you, not prioritize. All of that stuff can go away. If you capture the email, you own the email and you can always interact with your customer if you own the email. So one of the questions we had this
Yeah,
weekend in our panel, somebody's, well, should I go with MailChimp or ConvertKit or all these different software? And he was so bogged down in the cost
the
and the
text.
benefits and the features. And I was like,
Mhm.
forget all that. Just start. Throw up a Google sheet with a simple form, if nothing else, or get a WordPress plugin that's just collects, information. Don't worry about what you're going to do with the email. Just start collecting
Mhm.
them. You can figure out the technical stuff later. But yeah, email is huge. That is a direct one-on-one conversation with your customers.
Now, would you recommend like a certain amount of time, like a certain number, what am I trying to ask? Like a certain number of times that you interact with your email list a week? So especially if someone's just getting started, are they like, do they have to send a weekly email? Does it need to be monthly? What would you recommend for people getting started?
I think it depends on the content and what you're offering. If you're just starting out, you may not have enough content, you may not have enough stuff going on to justify a weekly email. But as you build and you develop more content, you develop more offerings, your services grow, you can start looking at that. So here's what I do is I do have a weekly broadcast that I send out. Actually, I have a few different weekly broadcasts. So we're sending twice a week, we're sending emails to our entire list. I'm sorry, I changed that 3 times a week. One is just a general email. Hey, here's the articles. Here's the information we published this week. Go read that. A second is the same kind of thing, but with some of our other features other than articles. So we have a directory of Native American companies and products. So we'll feature somebody in that. We have a directory of Native performers, so speakers and dancers, those kind of things. So we'll feature somebody from that. So that email is kind of different from articles. It's featuring other parts of our community. Then the third one is, and again, this is just something when you get enough content, you can do this. Our third email that we send every week is, we call it Throwback Thursday. And it's just an email featuring an article that was in the past that our readers may have missed. And so it's just going back through our back catalog and putting out those. So we send those 3 weekly broadcasts. Now, I send a lot of other emails. As you start building out your email list, I highly recommend, and this, you should do this first, early in your process, is develop email sequences. I think those are huge and very important. The first email sequence you need to build is just that nurturing email sequence that when somebody subscribes to you, even before you send a broadcast, weekly email, you need to have a series. And it can be 3 or 5 emails. It doesn't have to be big, but it tells them what are the 3, if I ask you about your business, you should be able to tell me 3 things your business does. Those should be your first 3 emails, right? Is here's who I am, here's what we do, and here's how I'm going to help you. Make an email sequence about that. And then everybody that comes into your ecosystem gets onboarded and gets that same introduction. And so everybody kind of starts on the same playing field. And you can expand that as your business grows. You can make that list longer or shorter or whatever. But then as you start segmenting your business, so for us, we have a separate email sequence for people that are new to powwows, that have never been before. And we have a whole email series just for that. We call it Powwow 101, right? And we're going to send you through that. And it's what to expect when you head to your first powwow. And that's maybe 8 or 9 emails, right? So we have several different sequences like that. It's another way, again, it's another touch point that you're going to be able to interact with your customer and give them your messaging.
Oh, I love that. Some of my listeners are network marketers, and that would be I'm just like thinking of all these ideas, like, because I feel like that is one area, especially, and network marketing does a really great job overall of a lot of the aspects of business. But I think one of them that companies tend to not cover as much as the emails.
Right.
And even just explaining just how you just did, I'm like, oh my gosh, you could have one for someone who's a first time buyer, someone who's never bought from you before, someone maybe interested in the business, like all these series that people could make and just automate some of that stuff. And that's another huge time saver, because you're building community and you have that all set up, right? That it's,
right. All
it's
that's
just running on
built.
autopilot.
Yep. It takes time. Going back to that reminds me of an answer. Another question you asked is, how I found time. One of the other things I did, and I did this for years, is every time there was I worked at a state job. So I had a government job. So every time there was a state holiday and my daughter was in school, so we didn't have matching ones, right? I had a co-working space here in town, and they would always laugh because I would walk in the door and they would, oh, what's today's holiday, right? Because I would only go up to the co-working spaces when it was some state holiday. And those were the days where I can remember I was going in. Some of those days were like, okay, today I'm going to write this email sequence. And it was those kind of days were awesome for me, is because I was able to go in and take a big project and spend all day and really dive into it. And I remember that specifically is where I went and built some of these email sequences, is doing those holiday co-working spaces.
Yeah. I only have one welcome sequence, but I've like tweaked it for different freebies that I have. But that's pretty much what I did. I knocked it all out in one day because I wanted to remember what I'd written the day before,
right?
Like the quote unquote day before. So I went down and I just like knocked them all out in one day. Not in a co-working space though. That would have been fun. No, but well, that's what you have to do. And I love that you said that, because I'm very much the same way, as where I'll save, like if I have a larger chunk of time for like a bigger project, and try to do something that I can easily segment in my littler chunks of time throughout the day.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always work to do other stuff that way. Now, how many times have you been to Disney World, Paul?
For me personally, I don't know my number, but my daughter knows her number. She kept track, and she had a goal of going to Disney World so many times before she graduated high school. So, before she graduated high school, she went 42. We took her 42 times.
What?
Um,
That's so cool.
And we just took her. That number is bigger now because we've taken her a couple
Mhm.
more times since she went to school. So, yeah, 42 times is what we took her before she graduated high school.
And how were you able to do that while also building a business and working? Like
Yeah.
how? Tell me your ways.
So, for us, we made some choices that, one, our side hustles, when they were side hustles, were that revenue, it was for us to build the lifestyle we wanted, right?
Love
And we also made choices that, you know, when we were young and we had lower salaries in our jobs, right? We made choices that we drove inexpensive cars. We didn't do
Yep.
like we didn't go to the movies a whole lot. We only went to big premieres or something like that. We
Mhm.
chose not to do certain things because we prioritized trips.
Yeah.
So we travel and experiences was something that was just our family's choice, right? So over the years, that's, as we, had extra funds or whatever, we did that. Now, traveling to Disney 42 times, some people that's crazy. I will say, caveat, we live close enough we can drive.
Yeah.
So there was the
Nice.
first year we ever bought annual passes. I think we went 11 times that year. So every time
Mhm.
Brooke had a 3-day weekend at school, we would
Yep.
just drive down and go. Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
we are a
amazing.
little fortunate in that, but yeah,
Mhm.
those were choices we made, is to make sure we prioritized those family experiences over some other things.
Well, I love that because I get that question a lot, and it's all about your priorities. I
Yeah.
mean, we can't have everything in the world, so it's like you make those choices based off of what you're able to do, and you do them. Like I have friends who spend big tickets for NFL football games,
Mhm.
every week or whatever, and
Right.
that's totally fine. That's just I choose instead of doing that, then I go to Disney. Like,
Exactly.
you know, everyone has their decisions, but I absolutely love that, and I love that you were able to build a business with the type of freedom that you were able to do that, because I think that's really huge.
Yeah. And that's what we tell people is, those were our priorities, right? And that was why we did our side hustles for a long time. It was the why was we're going to generate these memories. We're going to create this magic for our family. And that's kind of why we kept working. And Powell's.com has always been my side hustle, but we along the way we did lots of other side hustles in addition to Powell's. We were doing lots of things to make money along the way. I experiment. I've done portrait photography and landscape photography, and we've done all kinds of different other businesses on the side too. And
Yeah.
that's how we finance some of these things we did.
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Chronic side hustler right here.
Yeah.
Totally understand it. But, and especially I mean, I'm a teacher, so
Right.
it's not like I'm raking in the dough with that. So if I want to be able to do the things that I want to do, then, you find ways to do them.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we did, and that's we had to do that. Yeah, that's the only way we were going to be able to make these trips.
I love it. I love it. Well, Paul, thank you so much for sharing with us. I know I have learned a lot. I need to go back and listen and write some of these things down that, that you were talking at the beginning with the ads. I'm like, I'll just go back and re-listen to it to get the names of everything.
Sure.
So, where can everyone find you, connect with you, and share? I think you have some big things maybe in the works. If you want
I
to
do.
share anything, feel free to tell us all the things.
Oh, great. Thank you. So my website's paulgowder.com. That's where you can go and learn all about me and the resources and services I'm offering. Of course, I'd love for you to come over to powwows.com and go check that out. There is, like, I think I've said this, but we do have powwows that are happening in every single state in the country, as well as most Canadian provinces. And we have a calendar that can show you that. And everybody should go experience a powwow at some point. They're open to the public. Go check that out, powwows.com.
Cool.
As far as other stuff I have going on, so I just recently launched a course on online giveaways, which is a whole topic we didn't even
I know.
get into, but that's okay. But yeah, giveaways has been a big part of growing our community and our following and our traffic. So I have a course on that, and I'm now working on an email marketing course. It's going to be kind of email marketing 102. It's after you've built your list and you have some subscribers and you're sending a few emails. I want to show you how to get to that next level, to build better reader engagement, to build some different sequences like we've talked about today. So that course is on the way, and I'm hoping to have that published here maybe in beginning of March. But you can find out more about that over at paulgowder.com.
Awesome. And I'll have that linked up, guys, in the show notes. I'll be sure to send that out in our email too, so you can just click and find Paul and connect with him in all the ways. Again, Paul, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.